Welcome back to What's on My Needles, and this week I'm working on a set of gloves that have these two little lacy bands as the cuff. So they're going to stack like that, be approximately there on a glove. So I'm going to get rid of the purple one for a minute and work with the black one, the green one with some black yarn. So these have already been finished off. I leave the ends hanging until I'm completely done with the project, mostly because I really hate weaving in ends. And I just flipped it inside out so you can see that's where the join is. In my case, I bind off to join the pieces together. Obviously, if you are not comfortable with that, with this particular pattern, you can in fact bind it off and then sew the ends together. But back to picking up stitches. So a couple weeks ago we did picking up stitches for the edge of a blanket. This is much the same way. I'm going to skip this first little wonky stitch, go into the second stitch, lay the yarn over, hold both pieces to the side and pull through. And now I'm going to hold the working yarn to the left so I don't get confused with my tail. Put the needle through, wrap the yarn around, and pull through. And again, and again. So this is pick up and knit. There is a difference between pick up and knit and just pick up stitches. Picking up stitches is actually just putting the stitch on the needle. Like that, or putting both. This is actually putting new yarn to make a new stitch. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, so I've put the 10 for the first needle on. Now I'm going to pick up my second needle. 1, 2. And I happen to know that per this pattern I'm picking up 28 stitches. And I know for me, I prefer to do 3 needles for knitting in the round. Especially for small circumference knitting, I prefer 3. In this particular case, that means I'm doing 10 stitches, 8 stitches, and 10 stitches on this last needle. The thumb for this particular glove is worked as increases, and I try to put it on the opposite side from the seam for the cuff if there is a seam. That is just how I design. That is not how everyone does it. That's just for me. So insert, wrap, and go. Now most of the time when we get to join and work in the round, part of that instruction is make sure it's not twisted. Well, it's very, very hard to be twisted when you're picking up the stitches off of something else. But this is a join and work in the round. So it's just knitting as normal. And I'm going to continue this for a couple rounds. And I will be right back to show you the next step. So I have completed the 5 more rounds till the next step. And this is essentially the same thing as picking up the stitches, only done a little bit different. So I just slid on the second ruffle. And I'm going to go back to that same stitch that we started in the first time. So that second stitch. And I'm going to insert my needle through the stitch on my working needle. I'm going to pull it through, and I'm going to pull it through the ruffle. So I'm going to repeat that. Insert it through both legs of that outside stitch. Put it through the needle like I'm going to knit the stitch, pull it off, and pull it through. And in that way, that ruffle just becomes part of the fabric. So this is a way to add ruffles, to add other pieces of fabric into a project where it's side on, or sometimes it's even you're doing this with 2 working loops. And I've switched now to going in with the left-hand needle. That's just a personal preference on occasion, but it's the same basic action of I'm still going knitting. I'm essentially knitting 2 together. Again, for those of you who maybe have not been watching for as long, my knit 2 together is in the opposite direction for most people. So for most of you, that will look like a slip-slip knit. And I will continue that all the way around until that purple has been worked in. And then I will be working the rest of the glove. So again, this is the cuff. This lines up right here, and it will move forward to the hand of the glove, and the glove will end right around my knuckles. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you next time. If you liked any of the products or patterns featured on this week's episode, they are available on Theatrical Crafts on Etsy. They are also available on Ravelry, also under Theatrical Crafts.